The matric pass rate has improved by 0.2%. The Basic Education Minister, Angie Motshekga, has praised the class of 2021. Well, let's get reaction now from the head of academics at ADVTECH Schools. That's Desiree Hugo. Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me, Desiree. So your overall impressions, it's a marginal improvement in terms of the performance, but the education authorities are praising the performance of the class of 2021, particularly given the context in which, they finished the last 2 years of their schooling. Your overall sense of these results that we received yesterday?
Yes, and I certainly think I would support the Minister in acknowledging the hard work of our students, as well as our teachers. These students have been affected for the past 2 years in their learning, and we really need to acknowledge what they've done, what they've achieved. They've really shown great determination and grit to perform at the level they have under these difficult circumstances. And I also think the Department of Education certainly put a focus on the learner support program that was a positive intervention which supported the learning and ensured that the children weren't left behind. So I do support the Minister in acknowledging the hard work that these students put in to achieve that result that has now placed them on the precipice of new opportunities that perhaps we can also speak to later.
Is there a conversation, Desiree, that we should be having around the difference in the pass rate between, the IEB results that we saw a few days ago and the results coming through from the public schooling system? Where is the differential there? Is it in the amount of support and resources that IEB candidates would have received throughout their schooling career, and particularly at matric, that perhaps doesn't always happen in the public education system, or is there something else that we are missing?
Yeah, I think if you look at some of the elements of the technical briefing that we were part of last night from the Minister of Education as well as by the DG, we certainly cannot begin to say there's an equal comparison between the IEB and the DBE. The numbers are much smaller in the IEB school environments. There are far fewer schools that participate in that examination. And I think it is all, as you mentioned, it's certainly around school environments, the big access that e-learning offers to students in the IEB. The teachers been able to pivot immediately because they've been working on digital platforms. And the resource readiness certainly makes the opportunity for the children in the IEB to be exposed to better teaching and learning. And that's not saying that it's bad in the DBE, but the vast numbers to ensure that there's great support for teachers and teacher coaching and opportunities for students to access these different platforms is very different.
Yeah.
So there will always be a difference between a far smaller body and the big examination body that the DBE offer, or the large numbers of students participating in the DBE examination.
Yeah, and I mean, and you rightly point out that some of the public schools, DBE curriculum schools, actually extend quite a great deal of support to pupils as well, and the dedication of teachers. I think I heard a parent from GP Boys High School, for instance, this morning, talking about the amount of support that was being extended to the pupils there. So let's not, trash all of that while we're critiquing the situation. But now, in terms of the conversation now happening around a return to full-time learning, do these results that we've just seen, Desiree, and what you've just said now about the pivot between in-person, in-contact learning and digital-based learning, does that make the case, as well as the results we just saw, make the case for a return to full-time learning, particularly in the DBE context?
Yeah, an interesting question. I do think that schools that have access to e-learning platforms, that have access to devices for their students, that can offer data support for the families in their schools certainly will benefit those students. And going back into full classrooms, there's nothing that can replace a good teacher in a classroom with her students or his students. There's nothing that can replace the opportunity to socialize and co-construct knowledge together in a classroom. You know, so it's not always just about one person's view that may come through in a classroom, but it's about that collaboration, that collaborative learning, which is definitely part of future global competencies that we should be encouraging in classrooms. So there's a bigger conversation behind just, is an e-learning platform the way to go, and ensure that our students gather the data and present the results that we've seen now. There are definitely opportunities for it, and we have seen an uptake in online schooling, and it benefits some students, but the benefit of a good teacher in a classroom, building relationships, socializing, and children, as I said earlier, co-constructing their knowledge in a focused way, builds that deeper understanding and the neural pathways we want them for deeper learning and further studies.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and inputs here on eNCA. That's Desiree Hugo from the company ADVTECH.